It's interesting that there are a few of RPG series out there that are difficult to pronounce the name, or at least it's not pronounced the way you think it is by the way the title looks. The Atelier series is pretty well known on my channel for this, but there's also the Ys series. The Chronicles of Adol Christin I pronounced Wise for a long time, and to be honest, sometimes I still do. The Switch just got a new release for an Ys game, something I played through on the Vita and never had a chance to review because it wasn't compatible with the PlayStation TV. So here is my review of Ys Origin for the Nintendo Switch. When it comes to story, Origin takes place about 700 years before the events of Ys 1, taking place in the country or land of Ys. The goddesses disappear into a tower filled with demons, so a search party is sent in to be able to recover them. Diverting from series tradition, you don't actually play as Adol Christin in this game. You have two protagonists that you can play through the game with, Unica Tova, an apprentice knight, and Hugo Fact, a magical prodigy. They join the search party as they go through trying to find and recover their goddesses. This makes the game pretty different as Adol Christin is more of a silent protagonist like Link from The Legend of Zelda, whereas Unica and Hugo are constantly talking during all of the cutscenes. The game also does a lot of world building for the series in general, but especially setting up and referencing a lot of the events of Ys 1 and Ys 2 that take place in the same land. It's also worth noting that this is a game that you're meant to replay as different characters have different perspectives and you don't get the overall complete story until you play through as everyone. When it comes to gameplay, Ys Origin is an action RPG dungeon crawler. As you play through the game, you will be running around a huge tower-like dungeon as you find items to unlock new abilities and areas and fight enemies in fast-paced hack-and-slash combat. As I said in the story section, there are multiple playable characters, so when you start a new game, you choose which character you want to play through the game as. And characters are more than just gameplay. A lot of the story is different in each campaign, with bosses in different locations and different bosses in general. What you do in the game is basically explore a giant dungeon. You're going through this huge tower from room to room, fighting enemies in fast-paced combat, and constantly collecting upgrades to help you not only fight enemies, but unlock and access more of the dungeon. For example, Unica's first upgrade is a whirlwind attack that can be a really good AoE or combo finisher when fighting enemies, but it's also crucial to give you that extra bit of space to get across large gaps. The combat itself is very fast-paced, button-mashy hack and slash, even between the two different characters that play very differently. When you're running around as Unica, you're constantly slashing with an axe that is not that different from Adol's sword slashes from the Oath in Felghana. And then you've got Hugo, who doesn't use physical attacks at all. He is constantly at range with a couple drones that follow him around, letting you shoot lasers at enemies that honestly feels like he just came out of a horizontal or vertical shooting game. But despite all of the characters' differences, the button mashy feel is the same. You are running around at high speeds and constantly mashing that attack button to wear down and defeat enemies. And really, this exploration and combat is where the game really shines. You don't play an Ys game for story. You play an Ys game because it's a fun, fast-paced dungeon crawler. And in that regard, Origin really excels with all of the skills that can be used for multiple things, as well as how the platforming and combat works. Although it doesn't have an extensive party system like the newer games does, it has that really fast nature of the older games, and that fast nature is what makes them so much fun to play. Though there is a downside to this system, and that brings us to content and length. Now, as far as length goes, there's nothing really wrong here. You're paying $20 for a game that's made to be played multiple times, and you're going to get a good 6 to 8 hours out of each of those playthroughs. The main problem is the fact that the dungeon is exactly the same between all playable characters. You might not fight the same bosses in the same locations, but you're going to be doing all of the same puzzles each time you play through the game, which makes it a bit repetitive. But that's enough about that, let's move on to presentation. The visuals look really nice and smooth, and the 2D sprites on the 3D environments do look pretty nice in handheld mode. Though oddly enough, just like with the PS Vita and PS4 versions, the initial cutscene for each of the campaigns is set at a 4:3 ratio, and it goes back to full screen as soon as that one cutscene is done. But what is different is the performance and frame rate. The PS Vita version suffered from a lot of frame drops in boss fights, something the Switch version doesn't. It is a nice and solid 60 frames per second in both docked and handheld modes from start to finish. And that's all I've got to say about performance, so let's go right into battery life. On the original model, Ys Origin has a battery range of 4 hours and 15 minutes up to 5 hours and 38 minutes. On the Nintendo Switch Lite, it has a range of 4 hours and 19 minutes up to 5 hours and 55 minutes. And on the Redboxer V2 2019 model, it has a range of 6 hours and 6 minutes up to 7 hours and 40 minutes. In conclusion, Ys Origin brings another fast-paced RPG from Falcom's long-running series to the Switch. Now, the downside, the repetition of going through the same dungeon with all characters gets a bit dull after the second or third run. But if you're a fan of the series, and especially the Oath in Felghana platforming and combat style, it's a lot of fun to trek through. Reviews to Go rates Ys Origin for the Nintendo Switch an 8.5 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.